And welcome. This is Nta Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, education, described as the bedrock of the society, is a fundamental right of every child and individual for effective development and growth. And that explains the strive by all nations to maintain a high standard of education. Now, where the standard of education is low, the impact on the society is reflected with devastating consequences. A lot of factors are often advanced for the falling standard of education in this part of the world. These include poor or lack of motivation and remuneration for teachers, poor infrastructure, policy somersault, accessibility to schools, and the crave for paper qualification. Now, more worrisome for many is the decay at the primary level, which is the foundation for learning. Now, this is further compounded by alarming statistics of about 10 million out-of-school children and orphans and vulnerable children, put at 17.5 million in Nigeria. The precarious situation of education at the basic level has made many to recall with nostalgia the glorious old days when teachers were the pride of the society, as they promoted the best of pupils and students who contributed greatly to putting Nigeria on a sound footing. Now, where did Nigeria get it wrong? When did the country veer off that glorious path? And how can Nigeria achieve its quest for economic and technological advancement through education? How ready is Nigeria to walk the talk at improving the education sector? Now, these are some of the issues we'll be raising tonight on Nta Tuesday Live. But first, let's get to see this background report by Rashidat Mustafa Olagunju.
While the sole reason of being a human, education has become a right, as a lot of international human rights instruments provided for education as such. Also, the relationship between education and development is well established, implying that it improves productivity, health, and reduces negative features of life. Going by the above and given the present economic situation of the country, some loudly say the falling standard of education is responsible for it, while others argue that it is the drop in quality. However, majority said the missing link between the two started when Nigeria government at the time abrogated Grade 2 education, which was primarily responsible for producing trained teachers who are skilled in teaching early child education, otherwise known as pre-primary and primary education, a stage that is crucial in the development of human potential.
Gone are those days where there used to be scholarships for teachers, free accommodation for teachers, even free vehicles for teachers if they want to come into rural areas or so. Teachers must be respected and they should be integrated into the mainstream of the society.
Starting with basic education in Nigeria's public school, access to it is said to be inhibited by non-conducive learning environment, half-skilled teachers, gender issues, social-cultural beliefs and practices, as well as laying much emphasis on theoretical knowledge at the expense of technical, vocational and entrepreneurial education, leading to imbalance against girls' enrollment, attendance and completion rates in all levels of education. These and security threats in the Northeast added to the number of out-of-school children in the country. At the senior secondary and tertiary education levels, there are also challenges of inadequate funding, capacity building of teachers, and carrying capacity of institutions. All this impacted negatively on the sector, prompting the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, to request that an emergency be declared in the sector.
It is a very, very serious situation. When teachers cannot pass the exam, they are supposed to teach the children, to pass. It's a very tragic situation we are in, and this gathering together, to me, is one of the most important in this administration.
Education is our collective responsibility, and its failure can well be taken as the failure of the entire country.
Experts are of the opinion that the survival of Nigeria as a viable society depends largely on the health of our educational institutions and how well teachers and supporting staff are treated. Rashidat Mustafa Olagunju, NTA News.
And that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guest to you. We'd like to welcome to this program Dr. Hamid Boboy, who is Executive Secretary UBEC, that's the Universal Basic Education Commission. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Let me also welcome Mr. Lawrence Ogundano, is Director, Library Service of the Federal Ministry of Education. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We're glad to welcome to this program Hajia DJ Jibrin Bala. She's Chairperson, Niger State Teacher Professional Development Committee, a one-time Permanent Secretary, Niger State Ministry of Education, former Commissioner Finance in Niger State. And just to add that she worked with the Northern Education Initiative concerned with promoting girl-child education and the restoration of good standard of education from foundation level. She holds the honor of a member of the Order of the Federal Republic, MFR, and has been a teacher from primary to secondary school all the way. Thanks for being here, Hajia.
Very much, and good evening.
Thank you. And we're also joined tonight by Babatunde Oluwaju. He is an education advocate. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
All right. And linking us from our Kaduna Network Center is Professor Ibrahim Garba, who is the Vice Chancellor of the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Prof, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Cyril. Good evening.
All right. As we do on this program, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the appropriate time, you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. You can be part of discussions here. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them. However, for those who will be phoning in, we say this every Tuesday. For those who will be calling in, when your call gets through, do us a favor. Just turn down the volume of your TV set. Reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through is your name will appear on screen. Once that happens, you see your name on screen, it means your call has been passed through to the studio. So you can just go right ahead with your question or your comment. We advise that you shouldn't waste too much time. You shouldn't even bother about greetings. Just go straight to the point, ask your question or make a comment, and a guest will be only too willing to respond to such issues as you might raise. So, thanks for being with us. Welcome once again to Nta Tuesday Live. Today, education is in focus, and easily the first thing we'll ask is that the president, he's had a situation where teachers cannot even handle same tests that they set for their pupils, even at a lower level, is unacceptable. A disaster, really. Now, what would make the president of a country get so scared about the education in the country?
Thank you very much, Cyril, for raising this issue. The issue of teachers in Nigeria had been a problem for quite some time. It wasn't, say, in 2017, isn't it, that this problem emerged. For the last 15 years, I think those people who had been involved in education have been raising this issue that the quality of our teaching, of our teachers, isn't it? In terms of the ability to have students, isn't it? To teach within a classroom properly and to have students learn something, isn't it, out of what they are doing, isn't it? Had been going down. And again, this goes back, people perhaps look after events that had already passed in terms of the teachers' colleges that were abolished, in terms of a lot of other issues. But at the same time, if you look at it, isn't it, we need to actually try to understand first how teachers were produced and the quality of those institutions that are involved in teacher production. We have the colleges of education that had been there for quite some time. We have the faculties of education, isn't it, within our system. And unless and until you can produce the kind of material that can really go into the classroom, isn't it, and act like a real teacher, we get into this difficulty that we have gotten. The second aspect I think that we also need to look at is the nature of recruitment of teachers within the system and the nature of compensation. A lot of states, initially there was a problem of short supply, but subsequently, as our institutions had been producing quite a large number in terms of the colleges of education and so on and so forth, but were not well formed and to really manage the system, isn't it, within. We also ended up again politicizing the process of recruitment, where we try to get those teachers, isn't it? We try to make the recruitment of teachers as a political exercise. How do I reward my people? And at the end of the day, we ended up retaining people within the system that cannot teach, that don't even have the qualification, that are either school dropouts, isn't it, or have been half-baked and put into the system, isn't it, in a manner that has started impacting in a very negative manner the educational system as we have it. The teachers' colleges, of course, isn't it, had their effect. But at the same time, I think we have to appreciate that beyond teachers' colleges, we ought to have made those arrangements to ensure that teacher production within Nigeria went, isn't it, without a hitch in producing the quality teachers that we needed. There are other factors, of course, that needed to be put in terms of teacher compensation, in terms of a lot of other issues. So some I saw that now the teacher issue had become, if you want to become a teacher, your parent will tell you, no, please don't go into this particular profession. At the end of the day, again, if you really want to take up the teaching profession, again, it also involves those people who cannot get other courses in terms of either you want to go into medicine, you want to go into pharmacy, you want to go into engineering, you want to go into other sciences. You said, okay, let me go and become a teacher. At the end of the day, I think society had relegated the teaching profession to a point that we have started witnessing what we are witnessing currently in terms of a teacher who cannot pass the exam that he is setting for his pupils.
All right. Multifarious problems. But Mr. Gudano?
Well, one major challenge we have in that profession is absence of professionalization. Generally, for a profession to be above board, it must be recognized. What we have in the teaching professions are cheaters, they are not teachers. Cheaters in the sense that they don't have means of livelihood from other professions. So their belief is that, let me just get there and do one thing or the other. And at the end of the day, maybe I could get something better for myself. But until and unless the teaching profession is professionalized, TRCN is trying, but the truth is there that political will from government to make sure that those that goes into that profession are real professionals? Gone are those days when you talk a teacher is a role model, a teacher is a guardian, a teacher is a mentor. But these days, you even tell somebody that you are a teacher, the low self-esteem will set in. Because as a teacher, you are not recognized. As a teacher, you don't believe that you are not just there. The crave, unfortunately, for certificate and materialism too, has not put the teachers in a very good light. Because if you are not there, you are not just recognized. So, absence of professionalization is very core to the teaching profession. Then secondly, yes, the ES mentioned the issue of compensation. I think we should even go beyond that. If you even have the right compensation and the individual is not interested, not genuinely interested in that profession, then you are just wasting the compensation you are giving to that individual. So, yes, professionalization is core. The reward system is important. The training too. How are they trained? There is this focus on certificates. Certificates for certificates alone. But the question is, certificates for what? What's the relevance of the person having that certificate? How interested is he in the profession? But when you mention somebody is an engineer, you believe that in the society is higher than every other person. No. I think we should go back to the basics. The mistakes have been made, like DS said too, for the past 15 years. Some mistakes were actually made. Why did we cancelled the grade 2 teaching cadre. That was a very fundamental mistake. Because if you don't get the basics right, the foundation right, whatever superstructure we are building will just continue to be wrong.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's come to Hajiya J.J. Brimbala.
Well, I used to remember as a child in a teacher training college where you were taught how to teach. You were not just only taught how to teach, you were taught the contents of what you are to teach, which is absent now. You were a manageable number. You had one-to-one interaction between the teacher and and us, who were the pupils. You went out and really practicalized what you were taught. You worked with children before you were allowed to go and work with them. But the situation we are in, and there's this huge explosion in population, and then you can't have that kind of school I went through. As was said by Mr. Agundala, that removing this grade 2 teacher training colleges, they were a special kind of school of their own. Yeah. And everybody today is saying, why has this been removed? And I think this is the first disconnect. Yeah. And then changing the ATC, the Advanced Teachers College, which was a flow of the grade 2, and bringing in these colleges of education. The curriculum content of the Advanced Teachers Colleges are not implemented. I don't think they are implemented in what we can now call our colleges of education. And you need to go and see lectures going on in colleges of education or institutes of education. Take one of the lectures, let's say principles and practice of education, which is the most important thing, which makes the teacher a professional. You'll find at a sitting over 1,000 people listening. Tell me, they just listen and go. And it's supposed to be listen and practicalize. And then you find these people are supposed to go out on teaching practice for a period and they are monitored. They are hardly monitored. Even if they are, it's not to the quality that is expected. And so all this help to bring down the status of the teacher. When a teacher cannot speak well in the class, when a teacher cannot teach well, when the number of children who are in a class failed, the status of the teacher falls along with the failure of the children, and the society loses hope. You find no parents want to take their children to a school that does not have a good passing rate. Perhaps this was what have given rise to this examination malpractice. And you find people who come looking for jobs say, can't they get even a teaching job? Can you see? Even a teaching job. And that has demoralized us, the teachers, who have seen the yesterday of teaching, and it's killed the interest of parents. And this is why they're saying they will not allow their children to go into teaching. But it's an unfortunate thought. Who is going to bring the engineer? Who is going to bring the doctor and all that we need? It's that teacher. Instead of running away from it, let's look for a way, to improve on the situation of the teacher and the teaching profession.
All right.
I simply think we should not scapegoat the teaching profession.
Right.
Tell me what has not collapsed in our nation. Why are you not picking out the teaching profession? So you think the teaching profession will become an island of sanity in a sea of insanity? Tell me our doctors who you can point to who are doctors. Tell me our engineers who can point to as engineers. Tell me administrators who are administrators in the real sense. So you want to just pick out the teachers? Everything has collapsed. So the teachers should remain their sanity. Teachers that you have no respect for, those who cannot pay, those that, in fact, tell me if you, as Cyril, you will respect if your daughter brings a teacher home as the husband. You are talking about a nation where everything has collapsed. You are not picking the teachers who want to scapegoat them. Let us be honest to ourselves. For once, the teachers are just a symptom of the collapse of our society. We need to be honest to ourselves and say, we run a society that is collapsing. And what we are just doing is that we are scapegoating the teachers.
Okay.
We need to be honest to ourselves and say, let us take a step back and look at our nation.
All right.
What we are just seeing is just that the teachers are just a symptom. Our doctors are not doctors. Our nurses are not nurses. Our builders are no builders. Our architects are no architects. Our engineers are no engineers. Let's be honest.
Okay. We'll have time enough for you all to react to that, to respond. But we still have a guest in our Kaduna Center, and we'll want him to give his opening remarks, because we certainly will come back to what he has just said and wonder if these not so good doctors, not so good engineers were not the products of the not so good teachers. But we'll come to that. But let's go over to Kaduna, and Prof, you've heard the contributions from this end, and well, give us your perspective, and also bear in mind that even at the tertiary level, when you bring in out the brilliant graduates, the first class, the 2-2, the 2-1, the 2-2, they all have a specific direction in which they go. And then the third class, well, we begin to think they should just go and teach.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Very interesting discussion from the guests there. I also share the emotions of the last speaker, you know, in lamenting really in our nation what else has not collapsed or is still collapsing. I think it's the vicious cycle that works in the education sector. You can build the best of tertiary institutions. If you end up with products that are very poorly prepared, then of course this factory called tertiary institutions, especially universities, can do very little to help the situation. And this is our country. The entire products that is coming from down below are what they are. So when they come into the university, you find that some of them manage to get better, some of them get worse, and the lecturer, in our own case, not the teacher, is left to do what he can, actually, within the challenges that abound. We know in this country that for many years, in the past, we have enjoyed quality education. Many of us were beginning to realize that once our generation passed by, it is unlikely that anything else that is of the past glory will be available in Nigeria in the education sector. We are seeing much of our generation to be the last hope. If there is anything ever that can be done to salvage education, this present generation have a duty to do their best to recover what they can. The environment is the key. This country has lost planning ever since. We never planned in accordance with our population growth. We never planned for what the nation requires in terms of manpower to develop the country. Everybody, every parent, every citizen is allowed to choose what he wants to choose in the career, such that, like the speakers have said, they make the teacher to be the last point of call in the profession. And yet everybody wants the teacher to be the one that will teach every other profession. We've lost it out. We've seen in other countries around the world what they've been doing to improve education. We failed to do. We know it till today. The graduates that we produce in Nigeria, they go abroad, they compete with the best of the best, because somehow we are very, very tough people. We learn under very tough conditions. And then we continue now to probably the government and all other stakeholders believe that things are well. Until you leave the shores of this country, you begin to realize that we are nowhere, to be honest with you. There are much poorer countries, even within our neighborhood, that have relatively good education, better than us. We do receive candidates from foreign countries into our universities. We see how they perform. In this country, many years back, we have taken the American system of education, and we are not America. And we have not invested in making that American education work. What makes America great is investment in education. It's not just education for education's sake. And you find that that's why the American model is copied around the world. But we took it, just maybe also like our politics. We took the American model, and then we are not practicing the American model in it. So I very much agree with the last speaker that this education challenge can be found in all facets of our life in this country. But of course, education, or the teacher being the foundation, is down being focused. And I think we take the responsibility. We continue to do our very best. We begin to see year upon year, the quality is getting even worse and worse. If you teach a particular class this year, you come to teach the next class next year, you find that it's different. The tendency is that you must begin to lower the standard, or take much longer time, or deploy much resource for the same set of students to learn what the ones before them have learned accordingly. So really there are much to think about in this respect. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Prof. Back here in Abuja, well, Hajiya, you had Babatunde Oluwajo. Is it an excuse that so many things have collapsed? Therefore, the quality of teaching, the quality of education must necessarily go the same way?
Well, the teacher and the teaching profession are not operating on an island. They're operating within a society where everybody contributes. I think the government has not given the teaching profession the serious thoughts that it should be given. And because of that, you look at the funds that is being allotted to education in the entire national budget. It's so insignificant. And you'll have more of the education and teaching in every corner, every nook and cranny of this country. And you can imagine how much that amount will how much will go to any of these areas that we're talking about. And if that is so, definitely the teaching and the teacher and the teaching profession is handicapped. You're preparing people who would take care of the learning of all other professions, as you say, the doctors, the engineers, and all that it takes. And I think the teaching profession should be singled out and be given extra, care, so that they could give the best to, the society. And I don't think that the teaching profession is being singled out and, given a bad name to be killed. The reason is that the teacher is supposed to be the role model. The teacher is the one that everybody looks up to, parents would allow their children. And if the teacher is not functioning, the society has to cry out. And it's when they cry out that people look up. Now we are all crying out that the teaching and the teachers have gone down the drain. We are now looking for ways to improve the situation. And if nobody is saying anything, nobody will look at. So this is the teacher and the teaching profession are in the front burner. Nigeria has to look for a way to salvage the situation.
Two things we're going to put aside because we'll come back to them. The population explosion, one. The funding, which you have just talked about. We're making a note of that, but I'll return to it. But meanwhile, I'd still like a response on, is it that teachers are being singled out for vilification, really? Or it's just that this is a critical situation that needs to be addressed?
Education is core to national growth and development. And if you talk about growth and development, especially in education, you cannot wish away the teachers as a profession. You see, you talk about doctors, pharmacists, whatever profession, they are taught by teachers at one level or the other. But unfortunately, our investment in education has been dropping for quite some time. Somebody talked about that it's not as if the investment is very poor. Yes, but it has been dropping. And again, the amount released, what is the level of monitoring and evaluation? Because when you give money, is there value for money at the end of the day? Do you monitor what that money is supposed to be used for? And what is the result after the release? Yes, the budget is there, but at the end of the day, what is the feedback? What feedback are we getting? So, yes, we may budget, but If we don't follow up what this money is used for, then our investment will be as good as useless. That is a statement of fact. Then I said something the other time. Are we really having teachers these days, or cheaters? People who cannot get employment or get means of livelihood from other professions, all they need to do is rush there and looking forward to something better. Because as soon as there is an opening somewhere, before you know it, they are good to go. They fly off. But in those good old days, when you have a teacher, I remember some of those that changed my life. Those that taught me in the primary school, in the 60s, in the 70s. Those that changed my life, the teachers are not only role models, they are in loco parentis, in place of parents. Then, one other thing that is very important, charity begins at home. From which house is that puppy coming from? Our children now, as far as we are concerned, we just want to leave them, let them go to school. Where is that school? You don't want to know. Who is teaching them? You don't want to know. What are they going to? You don't want to know. So, the pupil or the student is neither here nor there. You as a parent, you are not following up. The level of teaching is dropping. So, the student, therefore, is left to wander on his own. Whereas in those good old days, comparatively, teaching or education was student-centered.
Okay.
Everybody was focused on the student. Everything was focused on the student, but not this day.
All right, the phone lines are open. We have a call coming through from Bauchi. Al-Hassan calling in from Bauchi. Hello, Al-Hassan. Go ahead.
Hello, Uncle Sirius. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Al-Hassan.
Good evening. This is my contribution goes like this.
Right, if we can just get the volume up in the studio here so we can hear Al-Hassan.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, Al-Hassan.
My contribution is this. Hello, I'm calling from Bauchi State. I'm also a classroom teacher. I want to contribute. And I agree with the librarian in the studio and what the professor has said. When we look at how my mommy said, what my mommy said, he has lamented that we are lacking professionalism, standard of living of the teachers. Like another contributor said, we are having teachers, not teachers. When you look at it, the reality is what we are lacking of sincerity of purpose. The government today are not sincere in implementing or upgrading the welfare of the teacher and the teaching profession. Because it's only in Nigeria that every Dick and Jack can turn into teaching. Anybody can come and teach, but not everybody can go and become a lawyer. Not everybody can come and become an engineer. But when you say teaching, teaching is just like a transit camp. Because people of the who is who in Nigeria are not in teaching. Take the House of Assembly, State House of Assembly, National, even State House of Assembly. Today, none of them has a child that is teaching in primary and secondary school. Today, a governor will just come up and said, I will conduct an aptitude test, capacity test. People that have even died ended up becoming successful in the list that came up from Kaduna State. So I'm advising the stakeholders in education, they should be sincere. We have heard from our parents that they even learn, not even in the classroom, but under the tree. Today, if someone who has passed only the primary 1 to 7 is speaking English, you cannot compare him with a graduate of today, because a lot of things are lacking. So my suggestion to the stakeholders, especially the governors, I don't want giving us headache to be sincere. They should make a teacher somebody. It's the glory of those days. Teacher is a role model. They should be given the best. Make cut of point. The professor is there and I believe he's listening to me. He's listening to me. Make the cut of point in JAM. Make it 200. So that fresh graduate will be earning 150,000 naira and above as a classroom teacher. Reinstate back the teachers' colleges that the so-called policy on education has abandoned. Like the professor said, we have copied the American system of education and we are not America. How much is the federal government investing in education? How much is the percentage that the United States of America is investing in their education? We should compare that. We are not in America. We are not Americans. So we are Nigeria. We are in Africa. We should practice what is obtainable. Somebody is in the primary school, you are giving him 25,000 naira or 20,000 naira. And in America, somebody is teaching in the class, it is a classroom teacher, is giving what will take him to the end of the month. But in Nigeria, you are giving a classroom teacher what will not take him up to 10 days. So it's a pity. I'm advising that, please, something good should be done. I will rest my case here.
All right. Thank you very much, Al Hassan. Well, is it just about the remuneration?
Well, no, not. It plays a role. It plays a role. If you look at a situation whereby somebody, there are some states that pay 10,000 naira. It was mentioned, isn't it, earlier. 10,000 naira cannot even pay transport for you to get to the school, let alone take care of other issues that are there. But of course, technically, salary is not the only motivating factor within the system, isn't it? There are many other factors, isn't it?
Wages are not what they should be.
Not, yeah. But people at least had been put in, isn't it? The little they could. What I want us is to go back. At least let's appreciate and understand what has happened in Nigeria in terms of a situation where we found ourselves in some kind of wealth, the oil money that came. And everybody went crazy. Everybody went crazy, isn't it? Money was easy, and so on and so forth, isn't it? Children now, instead of going to see what kind of real profession they could get involved in, is that what profession that can get them money. And I think we ended up in a crisis. The population, you mentioned that, was growing. We now had to begin talking about universalization of basic, of education, of primary education. The universal primary education came into being. Schools were constructed, isn't it, within a short period of time, trying to see how you can accommodate the rising population. The teachers were not there. They had to be produced, isn't it, in some kind of an emergency, a crash program, how to get people there. But at the same time, government was not properly focusing on proper teacher development, education programs that can produce the right kind of teachers. And we ended up in a real crisis at the end of the day, where the teaching profession itself, isn't it, with the rising population, there became other elites within the village, isn't it, that were much more important than the teacher. No parent, isn't it, and it's up to even the elite today. Go talk to anyone, isn't it, I requested my daughter, isn't it, please can you go into teaching? She said yes. And she mentioned that to a relative who got very angry and confronted me. Why should I destroy the future of my daughter? And I said, no, absolutely, isn't it, if that's her wish and she has the interest to teach, it's an honorable profession that I can support her. And as executive secretary of UBEC, if I can support her to teach, isn't it, what profession am I going to support? So we have a crisis. I think that crisis, we need to look at all those factors that led us to where we are in demeaning the profession, where government, the investment of government is now focused on other things. The issue of infrastructure, opening up the economy and so on and so forth, when the real basis, the foundational basis of developing our primary school system was neglected. The resources that were going, when other countries with similar resources and similar positions were investing. At the time, in the 60s and 70s, we are at par with almost all the other countries that have gone beyond us. But we stopped investing. And unless we go back into investing, isn't it, into education, it becomes very difficult. But investment that is comprehensive, not just about pumping money, but about ensuring that we rebuild our systems.
That's the monitoring and
exactly, that can really get us, isn't it, to achieve those goals.
All right, let's get back to the phones. We have from Beulah, Rabiu calling in. Hello, Rabiu.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
What I want to say here is that in Nigeria, it's only in Nigeria that teaching profession become a dumping ground. Why is only teaching? Why is only teaching? Governors always complain about teaching, even our dear president complain about teaching. Why is it the only teaching? Is it the only sector that is converted into a dam sheet or something like that? Why? People are not paying their dues. People are not having their basic salaries. Everybody is getting his own salary, but not teachers. In fact, our president did complain that some states are not paying their salary. Yeah, it's true. He gave them, what do you call it, Paris Club, so many money he gave them. But still, some states are still, teachers are owing their state governors, like Adamawa, like if you go to Kogi, several states, 8 months, 9 above, they are not paying them. And they are still complaining that their children are not getting the right education. How? Are they going, how? I can't really complain. Because the thing is very pitiful. Even if you are like you want to get married, people, if you know that you are a teacher, they can't give you their daughters because you have nothing to feed their daughters. People don't want to go to teaching, don't want to be a teacher because in those days, if you are calling as a teacher, teachers are raising their up heads. But now, if you are calling a teacher, someone will just put his own head on the ground because he is ashamed to be a teacher. So this is my complaint. If government can invest in education, they can implement what they are saying or what they are putting in the budget, I think education will be better place. But if they cannot do that, please, they should stop complaining. They should stop complaining. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you very much, Arabiu. Now let's come to the issue of training. Yes, the population exploded. In the past, you had a dedicated system where teachers were trained. And some people would say at some point in time, particularly in the north, we started losing it when a contraption then known as pivotal was introduced. Secondary school graduates who had no experience in teaching were recruited, given a crash program. They hadn't gone through the training that was available in teachers' colleges, and they were unleashed on primary education. Do you subscribe to that?
Thank you, Cyril. I think we need to take a step back and know where we are coming from. The crisis we have in education in Nigeria was orchestrated, was conscious by the military. I mean, those who got into the military were not the smartest. Those who became professors were the smartest. The military, I mean, the university at the point became the bulwark of resistance against military. And those who became the military head of state or whatever, who took over the country, saw the university as a problem. And there was a conscious attack. Attack in terms of no feeding, you cannot do receipts. Attack in terms of you have to pay for bed spaces. Those things started from university and it gradually percolated to the secondary and primary school. So it was not an accident where we are. It was conscious. And if we need to revive or, address it, we need to understand where we are coming from. The Nigerian state did not by accident neglect the training of teachers. Did not by accident neglect education. It was conscious because the education became a problem to the military leaders. And therefore, they consciously attack education. And for us to now get this things right, we need to go back to the basis. That number one, as a nation, we need to prioritize education. To know that education is not just a process of giving people a meal ticket. That education is a process of developing your citizens in order to develop your nation. And that is, while it may be difficult to drive an educated populace, they are the only ones that you can lead to develop your nation. If we don't go back to that business, understand where we are coming from, we'll just be addressing the symptoms. The Nigerian nation consciously destroyed its education because the leaders, especially the military, under the military, saw education as a problem. They saw those who are educated. And sir, you are here. Even the West is supposed to be the most educated part. Recently, you produced a report where almost all the governments in the Southwest could not access your fund because they could not provide the counterpart funding. And that tells you the nature and the way our elites, our leaders see education. A fund you are supposed to just provide counterparts and access. Almost all of them in the Southwest that are supposed to be the most educated part of the country. None of them, almost all of them. It shows, therefore, that they don't value education. They don't even know the meaning of education. Except we understand that fact, that you cannot develop except you have an educated populace. You cannot become a nation except you have people who are educated, who can now become your ambassadors, will not get it right. I therefore want to say that we have an elite, a ruling class that does not know the meaning of education. And don't be surprised, why would they know? When many of them are either dropouts, or Chicago graduates, or Toronto products. Some of them went to secondary school, and their party leaders, they have no classmates. How can such person value education? How can they prioritize education? How can they know that there's a fund from UBEC? All we need to do is to provide counterpart funding and educate our people. Let us be honest to ourselves as a nation. Those we have now don't know the meaning of education. They don't know the value.
All right. We have calling in from Enugu, Nnamani. Okay, we've lost the call from Nnamani, but let's go over to Kaduna. And Prof, three things we have looked at now: policy, funding, training. Now there's another aspect I want you to consider: the question of dedication. For those who go into the teaching profession, do you find a corresponding dedication as you used to find in the past?
Cyril, I still want to emphasize planning. You see, Nigeria has become a laughingstock in the world because we are either ignorant, unwilling, or just totally jokers. Because, you see, education is an international commodity and is very competitive. Most of you in this studio and our leaders send their children abroad to go and get their degrees and other qualifications. Why? Because they think they are going to get the best. Now, what makes those systems having the best of education? They plan. For example, do we care to know how much does it take to train a university graduate in any university? Wherever you go, university education is an international education. The curriculum is the same, the teaching delivery is the same. Probably what matters or what differs is the investment that we're talking about. Now, if you send a candidate abroad to a particular university in the US or in the UK or in Malaysia or in Uganda, ask yourself, how much do you pay to train that student to earn a degree, for example? And how much do you invest or do you spend in Nigeria to train the same candidate or student to earn a degree? And you think the two will be the same, even though the same curriculum is taught, the same qualified teachers. You go to any university, many universities in the UK, in the US, you go and meet Nigerian teachers there. Nigerians who are schooled totally in Nigeria, immigrated, and are teaching over there. And they teach the best, because there you can't afford not to teach as required. So what is the problem? We tend to ignore, not to plan. For example, the cost of training of a student in a university, how much is it? How much do you pay tuition fees in Britain to train undergraduate student? Let's even say £15,000. How much is that in Naira? How much are students paying in Nigeria for the cost of education in a university in a year? 20,000 Naira. And you think these same candidates will get the best education. The gap, is it filled up by the government funding so that you end up training the student to get the same quality of education than you will get abroad? We just fail to understand this. Now, tell me, how many candidates in this year's JAM, for example, 1.7 million candidates sat for the UTME exam. Close to 1.6 million wanted to go into the university. Only less than 100,000 wanted to go into a polytechnic or colleges of education. Now, meaning that everybody wants to go into university and take a degree. Why? Is degree the only knowledge or the only educational certificate that will guarantee good life? Just like some speakers have said, we are crazy for certificates because we think getting this certificate will now be the meal ticket to a better life. We fail to learn skills. We fail to grow good teachers because good teachers, especially for the lower level, are not grown in the university. They are grown in these colleges of education. Good technologists, technicians, artisans are grown in the polytechnics. And nobody wants to go to those layer of colleges but universities. And then we cannot invest as much money,
And we'll still return to the issue of the dedication of those who go into the teaching profession. But if we still have this caller from Adama, I do believe, Bashir. Is Bashir still on the line? Yes, Bashir from Adama.
Yes, I'm still online.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yes. The discussion is very lively and very interesting. But my contribution here is that I think there is a complete failure on the system. Now, where you have budgetary provision for education, you never see the light of the day. What are you expecting? Certainly, there's going to be a serious problem. So my contribution here is that let us go back to the system. Let's re-examine the system and fund education appropriately, just like what my mother is saying there. And the issue of attaching a state contribution in order to access funds from UBEC, it needs to be reviewed seriously. For quite some time, a lot of states could not access such funds. There is a need for UBEC to re-examine this because that, again, is a complete failure. Yes. So what we are now seeing, there is a need for the government, both at the federal, state, and local government, give education first charge priority. Those of us that were in the teaching industry, we saw when former MTech was administering basic education in this country, things were moving. Salaries were paid on time. Teachers were promoted. But what's happening today? So there is the need for the government to seriously look into overhauling the entire educational system so that budgetary, I repeat, budgetary provision should be made as presupposed by the UNESCO, the 26%. And once that is done, I am quite sure education will bounce back. The issue of teacher training colleges, I'm a product of that. And just as my mother has said there, it was very, very effective. And the system looks so useless. And today we have a lot of problems in the education industry, especially in the basic education. So we are calling on the federal government as a matter of urgency, reviewed the educational policy completely. I am wondering what the JCC and the NC have been doing all along. This is a slap. The forum is more of jamboree. Every quarter they go in, come out. I served as a permanent secretary, retired. I feel sad. So education should be given a priority. And when we say if the government said education is priority number one, it should be shown on the ground. So I am of the opinion that there is a need for the urgent attention by the government to review the educational policy in this country so as to make it functional.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Bashir from Adama. Now, we've looked at so many aspects of it, and like I said, we'll still, at some point in time, go back to those who choose to go into the teaching profession for one reason or the other. But this is just the first part of this discussion, and we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll begin to look at what's been done to revive education, and hopefully we'll see what some states and other parts of the country are doing to try to revive education, to again place the teaching profession on the right pedestal, to see how that can impact on education. So stay with us on Nta Tuesday Live. We'll take a short break. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
Nta Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Can I assure it's such a hot topic, and there's no letting up on the discussions on looking at the issue from various angles. We start this segment by going out with our cameras and talking to the citizens to find out just how they feel about education.
The standard of education in Nigeria, some people say it's falling, but left to me alone, I am an educationist. To me, the standard of education in Nigeria is not falling because we are coming from somewhere and we are getting to somewhere. The standard of education is not falling. You know, a lot of people, teachers have been trained and retrained. We have a lot of graduates in Nigeria. So if we have, like we have NTI, where we are training teachers. So if teachers have been trained and retrained, then I believe that the standard of education in Nigeria is not falling.
Now, let's look at your policies. Why are there so much inconsistencies, in policies in the educational sector?
Well, it is not, inconsistency in policy is not peculiar to educational sector alone. I think inconsistency generally in policies in Nigeria is all over. And this has to do with political reasons.
But these days, why it's like that is just because everybody wants to run fast. Everybody wants, because certificate becomes an essential, that if you don't have a certificate, you can't go to anywhere. So everybody is now hustling. Now you must get that certificate anyhow, by any means, you must get it. But it wasn't like that in the past. You take time to study, you know that when you pass out, anywhere you are capable.
The teachers also should know that the part they have to play is to impact positive and permanent change on the learner. It means that if a teacher says he's teaching and whoever is teaching does not understand what is teaching, it means teaching has not taken place. So if the parents have played their role effectively, the onus is on the teacher to ensure that whatever is going to teach, the child should understand or the learner should understand. And that's why we talk about teaching methodology. So you cannot just come and say, because I can speak English, I am a teacher. No, you must know the method to communicate to the children appropriately, accordingly, because we have different kind of learners in the school. You have children who are fast learners, you have children who are slow learners. You must understand that. The teacher should have the educational psychology to understand this child that is dealing with. And that way, we will be able to get to a certain level, because it is fundamental and that has to be dealt with first. Let the parents understand the role they have to play. Let the child understand the role he has to play. The child should be in the class when the child should be in the class. Not when the child is supposed to be in the class, this child is running around in another place. Who will the teacher teach?
Then we have teachers who are from all different fields of studies who really did not go through the educational system and yet they are in schools. So how do you expect someone who studied medicine or who studied electrical engineer come to class and is teaching English language? What happened to those who studied English education? What would they be really impacting on the kids? And then the primary, secondary school have made it easier because they want to reduce costs on payment of salaries, where one teacher has to take these multiple courses, which really isn't so.
If we want to have more graduates who are capable of being job creators, being more creatively employed on their own, being more supportive in development drive of the country, we should be able to go back to the school system to look at what are the fundamentals, what ought to be in place, and put it in place. And more so, I want also to use this opportunity to challenge managers of our tertiary institutions. I mean the VCs, the registrars, and the rectors of polytechnics. They should be able to find better mix to onboard private sector effectively. A case in point is that if you go to US, MIT is a research center for so many conglomerates from UX. So why can't our university serve as a research center for different businesses that operate in Nigeria?
Back, restructure our educational system, starting from the teachers. Like in a class now, you can see 200, 300. How can, with one teacher or one lecturer, how can they get a quality education? How can a student be free to go to the lecturers and lay a complaint or a helping hand?
We have to do a holistic approach to education. We have to declare a state of emergency in the educational sector. We have to give priority to education. We have to increase our national budget in education. We have to give certain percentage world standard to education so that at least we can have some little improvement. I'm happy with this administration that they are trying to do that, but they need to do more. Look at the recent happenings in Kaduna that a just test was conducted to teachers, whereby majority of the teachers failed the test. So according to the Mr. President, he said the standard of education in Nigeria actually needs to be revisited.
The voice of the people. So many suggestions there on how to solve this problem. rather difficult problem, really. But again, we said we'd look at how some parts of the country are addressing it, and how education is being brought back to its pride of place. Let's start with you, Jibrin Bella.
All right. You know, with the advent of this present administration, I am from Niger State, incidentally.
Certainly.
The governor, is lucky to have somebody who is keen in education. I think education is his #1 priority, and he took a holistic look at particularly education at the primary level. And after doing that, he came up with 2 committees. One technical committee and the other what he calls the council committee. And the council committee gives him reports on regularly on what the committee and the technical committee is doing. And the technical committee is made up of educationists, professors, doctors, retired, seasoned educationists. And they came up with, they looked at this, took a good look at the state education at the primary level, and they came up with a report, first report, and later came up with a suggestion which he accepted. And this was this issue of going back to yesterday's kind of education. It's not a grade 2, it's not a teacher training straight like it used to be, but a semblance of it. You know, Harvard School, we now have one of the centers has kicked off, where we have children from SS1. They'll do their SS school certificate. And in addition, they'll be taught principles and practice of education, so that when they leave, they could go to the university or colleges of education better prepared. All right. The government is prepared a very good and enabling environment for them. They're getting everything free of charge. Feeding, clothing, drugs, soap, everything that all the child brings to that school is just the school, outfit that you wear on. And then in this one that one is taken off, they're going to have 3, 1 in each of the zones. And children will be admitted from each of the wards of the states. All the local governments will have representation. 1 girl, 1 boy from each ward. And one of the reasons for this is that, 1, this issue of no teachers in distant areas, far away area or hard to reach area. Every child is coming from one place. So at the end of the day, you'll go back.
All right.
And so there will be no lack of teachers as it is today.
That's one way.
Or,
okay.
As it is today. And you might say, how do we get these children? How do we select them? Every ward has a committee. The senior principal of a school in that area, the senior headmaster, the principal is the team leader of the committee that will do the selection of these children. The headmaster will be the secretary, will have the representative of the traditional council, will have the local government education councillor from that ward, a councillor from that ward. In actual fact, it's like returning to the old system where everybody is involved in the selection and the training. And we're not taking these children on individual. The local government brings them to us collectively. And where a local government is not located where there's a traditional leader, the local government chairman, and where there are traditional leaders, the traditional leaders, the children are taken to, the parents will be there to see their children, see their performance. And in a quiet way, we've been rubbing into the child's mind, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be, and all that it takes to make them want to be teachers.
Okay.
It's on.
Right.
And the government has given, when we gave our report, the government gave the approval, gave the money, and gave us a free hand.
All right, that's one aspect of it. We'll take other aspects, but first let's get to Warri, where we have Wilson, who's calling in from Warri. Hello, Wilson.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, what's been calling from Worry? Yeah, good evening. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's a nice program. It's a nice program, please. I think basically, if I may borrow the word of late Professor Chino Achebe, he said in one of his books, the contemporary problem with Nigeria. If you go by that book, he said there's basically nothing wrong with Nigeria as a context. So the problem of Nigeria lies with the inability of our leaders not to live up to their responsibilities. And I believe it's the basic truth. Way back in the 80s, where I was opportune to be a pupil, and until I became a student in the secondary school, then I graduated as a civil engineer. I quite believe that we were properly trained in the hands of good teachers who imparted so much into us. And in those days, there were pivotal teachers. And these pivotal teachers did so much to us that at the end of the day, the school curriculum was better put in place. That a lot of us then were able to be given better training and better academic understanding. But today, if you look at what is happening, all of a sudden schools were taken from the missionaries. All of a sudden schools were taken from missionaries, and private schools became the order of the day. If you look at the activities of the private schools, what do they do? And how much is the government ready to look into the activities of the private schools? Now, if you look at, in fact, we were actually told that traveling is part of education. When our leaders travel out of this country, what do they learn from other countries? In terms of the education in other countries, the standard of education in other countries, what do they bring back home? Nothing. But rather, when they come back home, they feel they should come and open their schools and bring down the public schools, the standard of public schools, thereby not encouraging the public schools. You see that at the end of the day, they keep encouraging their private schools.
Okay. All right. Okay, Wilson, part of the problem has been identified, lack of proper policy. But, Dr. Bobe, the issue of funding is fundamental. It keeps coming up on and on and on and on and on. And what is the problem with funding?
Thank you very much, Cyril. Funding is very fundamental. We raised it earlier. That part of the problem that led us into a lot of these difficulties had been problems that emanated from the lack of funds actually dedicated specifically for the basic education sector to see that at least the sector thrives. And it persisted for quite some time. One of our euphonian speakers made reference to the payment of salaries by MPEC at that time, isn't it? That was established. Yes, MPEC was paying salaries. You know, but at that time, because there was no law, it was, you know, it was designated as state funds. And there is an annual census of the number of teachers, and these were deducted from source. But don't forget that 2002, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And at the end of the day, isn't it, that thing had to be stopped, isn't it, because it was deemed as unconstitutional. Okay. What did the government do? He said, okay, let's have some intervention fund. Let's get about 2% of the consolidated revenue fund that we can put in a place that now could be, isn't it, accessed by states. But to do that, the states are also required to provide, at least according to the UBEC Act of 2004, 50% counterpart, where the state puts, you know, the federal government puts its own 50%, isn't it, of that. And the whole politics of recent had been the inability of states to put up that particular 50%.
So now we're saying the states are more in default of that than the federal.
Yeah, the federal has got its money. You know, UBEC, whenever you come and put up your own 50%, the matching grant is paid. But the problem had always been the state reluctance in putting up the fee. And the whole logic in the funding process for, you know, specifying the issue of counterpart funding is to emphasize the fact that primary education, junior secondary school education, is the responsibility of the local government and the state. The federal government is intervening to ensure that this sector thrives. It is the state that has the schools, the state that recruits the teachers, it's the state that pays the teachers. So at the end of the day, I think we need to look at it, isn't it, you know, and find. But the good news is this. Yes, we have a problem in 2 zones. But for 2016, because states don't access their 2017, because it requires up to December 31st for the money to fully mature. You know, all the releases to be done. So for 2016, is the one that have access. Northwest has access. All the states have accessed their money for 2016. Northeast, unfortunately, the caller was coming from Adamawa. It's only Adamawa that has not done that, isn't it? You know, unfortunately, I had to keep on pressing Adamawa. For God's sake, you are putting me in shame. I'm also from Adamawa anyway, isn't it? You know, that Adamawa has not been able to do that.
I hope Niger has.
And Niger did. Niger did. You know, we had to keep on sending reminders to His Excellency that, for God's sake, Your Excellency. The North Central is trying, isn't it? You know, of course, we still have 1 or 2 states that are still lagging behind. Recently, even Kogi came and paid up to 2017. Even though 2017 has not matured, but it paid its counterpart funding. We get to a point where the South is also accessing. You know, we have the only 2 states that are outstanding, Bayelsa and Edo State. Edo State has indicated to me, the governor, that yes, he will pay it before the end of the year, as well as Bayelsa. Okay. So, but the problem comes in the Southeast, in the mature, educationally advanced states. Southwest and Southeast. None of the states in the Southeast had access to 2016. For the Southwest, we have 2 states, Lagos and Ondo. Ondo had come also and paid its entire, you know, Ondo was lagging behind. It has not paid since 2013. You know, 2014. So it has paid the entire amount. So we are making progress. Okay. The actual amount that now are available, isn't it, you know, in terms of unaccessed funds, isn't it, you know, is under 30 billion. Okay. For the entire period. But we still now have to encourage states. For God's sake, these monies belong to you. These monies are supposed to be used for the development of the basic education sector. Come and get it.
Okay. Let's go over to Maiduguri. We have Mohammed calling in from Maiduguri. Hello, Mohammed. Are you still there?
Hello. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I'm calling from Maiduguri, sir.
Go ahead.
So since we are talking on education, so we all know that education is what happened to us from the day we are born and the day we die. So if you take a look at the educational sector here in Maiduguri, you will see that a lot of teachers are suffering. So when you see, look, I am not a politician, I'm not criticizing or condemning any government. Just is to telling the truth. You will see governors and other stakeholders of education in the state awarding big contracts. Even they built up there. So if you see teachers, they don't have, they are suffering and they don't have any energy to go up that to up there and to teach or impart knowledge to the children. I have a daughter. She's a degree holder. She's not earning up to 10,000 as a teacher. So how does she educate children? No motivation. They are suffering. So.
Okay, Mohammed, thanks a lot. You've brought out another issue about that, the motivation, the pay. Perhaps that's why quality people are not going into the teaching profession. Since there's very little to gain in terms of remuneration. But let's go again to Kaduna, Kaduna Center, and ask the Vice Chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Now, we've talked about so many issues from the basic level. And Prof, by the time the students get to you, there's very little you can do to turn them into who they should be, isn't it?
That's right, Cyril. In addition, at the university level, we are saddled with the responsibility also of conducting research and creating knowledge, disseminating knowledge, improving society from the knowledge that we have. So this has added our responsibility, and it comes with a huge cost, which again, there is no commensurate investment to support this research. You know, I have to be quick in saying that it is my belief that we are actually training more than necessary number of people at the university level for university degrees. We should concentrate at reducing that huge numbers that we receive at the university level because of the attraction, to begin to see that we train quite a number of our citizens at the lower level or middle level, I would say, in skill acquisition, vocational technical education, in teaching, teacher education, so that, but there must be commensurate reward. We know in many countries in the world now that it's not what you know, but what you can do, especially industries, so that it doesn't matter how many number of degrees you have. Once you don't have a skill or you don't have any substance that you can actually contribute to an industry, for example, your remunerations will be low. So in Germany, for example, there are middle-level technical people that earn better than university degree holders. So unless we begin to streamline the entire planning of education to see, do we really need all this large number of graduates that enter the university half-baked and come out even worse big than they entered sometimes? Because when they enter even, like somebody has mentioned, you have a classroom in the University of Engineering that has 300 students, a classroom of physics that has 500 students, one teacher teaching, with little support in terms of technological support to help in the teaching. How do you produce good graduates from that? And then for these graduates that are meant to be actually planners, because university graduates in the first instance are supposed to have been trained with very high level of knowledge that they can actually plan for the lower level, not even themselves partaking in the delivery in the lower levels. So this has been the problem, like I said, going back to planning. We failed to plan to see what we need at what level and how to motivate people to go into those levels of education, because there will be commensurate reward when they come out of the institutions.
Okay, we'll stay in Kaduna because we have a caller, Sani, who's calling in from Kaduna. Hello, Sani.
Hello, this is Sani Balarabe calling you from Kaduna, Gachukun, Kaduna, please.
Right.
You see, I'm a teacher by profession, and I happen to be, teaching on the Igbo Local Government Education Authority. And I'm a victim to this RFI's, test, the so-called failure of, examination test, or what have they been saying. You see, nobody is having any doubt that some teachers are incompetent, because by, testing a teacher is by observing him when he is impacting knowledge to the purpose. You see, I'm sending, a question directly to the UBEC, secretary. You see, if you can do a thorough supervision in public schools in Kaduna, you see the enrollment there is very high. In a situation whereby you will find, 800 pupils in the class, sometimes even sitting under a tree. So how will you expect a teacher to impact in order to such a, populous, class? These are some of the problems. The problems in the education sector in Nigeria is not, the problem is not given directly to the teacher. Not, sometimes the policies being made towards the education sector is not being implemented. Because I could remember a thought in geography which says environmental determinism. That's to say,
Okay, hello? Right. Looks like we've lost that call from Sani. But anyway, he actually has made his point there, and we'll take part of that and bring it back here to Abuja, and let's talk to you from the Federal Ministry of Education on this. And if we're so worried that the quality has seriously dropped, as almost everyone has accepted, what about the issue of the inspectorate?
Well, early in the life of this administration, the Minister of Education came up with a committee, a team, that to look at the challenges in the sector and to come up with a solution. And that led, after a lot of critiques, after a lot of discussion, it led to the Ministerial Strategic Plan, 2016-2019, lifespan of this administration. There are 10 pillars there. And all we have been talking about, training, capacity building, either at the basic or early childhood level, they all came up. Curriculum, everything. ICT in education, library in education, they all came up. They are there. We have 10 pillars in education, Ministerial Strategic Plan. Now, that was what led to the retreat we had about 2 weeks ago at Federal Executive Council. It was a specialized retreat, essentially for the Federal Executive Council members, at least to bring them on board, to let them realize the need for an emergency in the education sector. It goes beyond funding. Funding is very core. Attitudinal change is very core. The buy-in of all the governors, very core. So that at the end of the day, it's going to be a holistic, call it resurgimento, a reawakening of the education in the education sector. And the minister said, even if the little money that government is investing, how are we monitoring whether it is going for or what it's meant for? And that threw up the challenge of a functional inspectorate department. And we are even gone beyond inspectorate now. We call it quality assurance, FECAS. Quality assurance. Is there value for money for what is budgeted for? Because at the end of the day, oftentimes, somebody has said here that there's no matching grant for what UBEC is provided. But even where there's matching grant, do we have impact, positive impact for the spendings? And when the Ministerial Strategic Plan was fashioned out, there were implementation strategies. How do we go about monitoring what is spent? How do we go about to find out what of it is the cost of education? And at times too, I don't know whether we are not being sincere with ourselves. At the university level, I want to give you this example. You say you cannot pay more than 20,000 for a session. But at the basic secondary school, you pay times 20 of that. You are ready to pay that. You are ready to pay for that. But at the university level, you don't care. You fashion them. Is it possible? How effective would that be? So these are some of the questions we keep asking ourselves. But with the Ministerial Strategic Plan, there's some realities will be faced. We are faced with some realities. And unless and until we have a change of views about some of these things, we may find it difficult. But we have started. The Federal Executive Council has been sensitized. They are on board. They know what is going on. because it's a document that has gone through the mills and it has been approved. The implementation strategy now, the next stage now, we're going to give a buy-in for the governors. Once the governors have a buy-in, we take it to the 774 local governments for them because they have a role to play.
It's a good thing you've mentioned all this. But
Yes.
again, as you know, all through the years, the policymakers have always come up with one form or the other. And it's the same question Nigerians ask all the time. Is this sustainable? What have you put in place to ensure that tomorrow, when this administration isn't there, some other administration doesn't come in and say, look, we've got to take a second look. It's been happening all over the time. The policy somersaults.
That is the legal framework. Because we took on board members of the National Assembly for the ministerial strategic plan to have the necessary legal backing. If the policy network has the necessary legal backing, then it will stand the test of time.
Right.
And definitely too, the governors will have their buy-in, the local government chairman will have their buy-in, and with a legal framework, and there is a functional implementation strategy. With all these on ground, I can assure you there's going to be a change.
We want an overall. You are advocating the total overall of the system. But let's look at another scenario. Yes, you put in the funding, you put in the infrastructure, you change the system, you train the people. But again, it's humans who are going to man whatever system that you put in place. Are we seeing people who are truly dedicated, even if they have the earn of pittance?
Well, to be honest, there are issues when it comes to the management of the sector. From the institutional level, to even in terms of disbursement of fund, management of fund, there are issues, which is why we are calling for democratization of the management of the educational sector. At the level of the primary school, the parents should be involved, the administrators should be involved, even the pupils should be involved. Because, let's be honest with ourselves, in other parts of the world, we see primary school pupils who are actually doing great things. Education has gone beyond the level where you just sit down somewhere and you think those who are the beneficiaries should not have a say. At the secondary level, the same thing. Most importantly, at the tertiary level, we need to democratize it because lack of democracy management of the institutions is the reason why it is easy for the administrators to steal. And there's a lot of stealing going on. Just like you said, we need to monitor. We need quality assurance. What are we putting in? What are we getting out of that system? But we cannot do it if we want to do it bureaucratically. The various stakeholders within the sector, the academic staff, non-academic staff, the students, the management, they need to sit down to determine what are the priorities for us. What are those things that will add value? We have situations where people access state fund and they go and build gates in a school that has no functional laboratory for students. In a school that has no library, they go and do fence. Because for the administrators, that is priority. That's how they can steal money. We need to democratize the sector and bring in every stakeholder and to determine the priorities and determine where resources should be put within the sector. For us, that is very critical. And again, when you talk about education, because the issue of funding has come up, at the secondary school level, you have options. I don't have to go to Montessori International Intergalactic School. I can decide to go to community school. There's option.
I went to a community school quite.
God bless you. And I went to one too, in Tolu Complex. And I'm here talking to you. At the university level, before now, there were no options, but now there are options. You can go to any university and go and pay 2 million, but that one that is public should guarantee access for the child of that poor farmer in the village. We cannot price them out of the system.
All right.
A state that cannot educate its citizen is a useless state. Because education, as I said earlier on, is not a process of earning a meal ticket in the name of certificate. It's about developing those who will become the vehicle for development. And every state that is serious, we are talking about, in fact, for me, it's even a throwback. Countries like Germany has declared free education. at the tertiary level for everybody. You go to places like Cuba, that has no resources. Education is free at all levels. In other parts of the world, even where they pay, there's access. Even if you don't have a penny, you can go to school. We used to have student loan. The student loans board, where is it again?
No, it's coming back.
Just wait. Now we don't have it. We are not going to, we are going to oppose the pricing. You cannot price the children of the poor people out of education.
Yeah, if the policy they are going to come back.
Do we have a time frame within which they will come out of that statement and become reality?
The ministerial strategic plan is between 2016 to 2019.
Until you bring it on board, don't price away the children of the farmers. The children of the poor should not be priced out of education. Education is not a luxury.
For example, the first thing we've done
is not a luxury.
For the Federal Executive Committee Council members to have a buy-in. And that we did 2 weeks ago. Now with the buy-in, I don't know whether you recall the statement of Mr. President. He said that he's declaring an emergency in the sector.
We agree.
And that is going to give it the necessary backing, including funding and every other thing that
if you people price the children of the poor away, it's going to be resisted.
One thing that is core
is the children of the poor must have access to
education. Is coming in. The education bank is coming in.
Right.
The loans board is coming in, because we realize that many people are going across, even up to Benin Republic, to get one certificate or the other. But then we are going to de-emphasize. Federal government is going to de-emphasize one thing. It's not certificate for certificate. There is technology and vocational education. There's going to be functional education. So that at the end of the day, there will be value for money.
Okay. Still, all of this will again revolve around the teacher. Hajia, so teacher, let me come back to you. Teaching, is it a calling or just for anybody?
Teaching in the past used to be a calling. You see, teaching, you want to teach because you feel that's the best thing for you. You're bringing up people. Today, teaching is anything does. Anybody goes in there. If you look at the missionaries and see, it's like more of a religious thing in the past. You took teaching, you know it's, I'm bringing up this person for life and for the hereafter. Right. And you held on to it and you did it to the best. You mold the person. You have satisfaction at the end of the road. But today, it's no longer like that.
How can we bring that back?
Fine. You know, when I say there is a disconnect, in the past, you touch the hearts of the people through whoever is taking on to the teaching, through continuous talking. You are the role model they look up to. They see something good in you as a teacher and would want to be like you. You are always there to guide, to advise, to tell them what to do and what not to do. And in telling them what to do and what not to do, you are doing what is supposed to be done. You guide their activities. You ensure they're doing, if it's teaching, they're teaching the correct thing. You've taught them how to go about it. You see, some of them have gone out of there because they don't know. You see, we blame some of these teachers. It's not their fault. They are not properly groomed. I remember, I still go back to my life as a child in school. You were taught how to walk as a teacher, how to stand and talk to the child on the blackboard. You were taught how to sit. And all this helps to build the person.
Let's take it to Kaduna, Prof. At the tertiary level, how much has dedication been affected by the issues of bread on the table?
Well, Cyril, in the tertiary education, it's a different ball game because the tertiary lecturers have to fight for their rights to get improvement in their welfare, and that has been the tradition over the years. Every improvement that comes to university or tertiary institution teachers came out of a fight with the government for a better condition of service. So it is now becoming a culture that periodically teachers have to fight their way out to get improvement in their condition of service. And that is why you find that that has culminated at a point into massive brain drain, because teachers now started looking for greener pastures within and outside the country. And true to type, you find that when you go abroad, you do the same work for better pay. But here, the same work you do, you get much less pay and no recognition whatsoever. So it is like still there are people that are dedicated, they are still willing to contribute, maybe because they have no choice, but out of sheer interest. Like Hajia said, some take it as a calling and they are dedicated even without pay. But to be honest with you, you compare the pay of a particular teacher or lecturer in Nigeria and just walk across, say, to Ghana and see how much are they paid. And then that's why we take our children to Ghana to be educated by the same people that have drained out of Nigeria and go and live in a better clime there and then make better life for themselves. So truly, you know, it depends how you look at it. There are dedications, there are not quite as dedicated, but really do you blame them?
Where do we start from? Is it right at the bottom? Is it a question? I've heard people say, look, there are so many countries in the world where teachers, you have to be among the best to be accepted to be a teacher, and the remuneration is way, 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 way up there. If we did that in this country, would that guarantee an improvement in the system? How much longer do we have to do this? Because would it be just increase the remuneration? What about the training? Where do you start from?
Well, thank you very much, Cyril. And I read that issue earlier, that to reform a system, it's not just about coming and saying, okay, pump more money into this. No, 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 let's do this. It has to be a systemic revival of the entire system. We have to look at each and every aspect. If somebody goes to a hospital, either having a stroke, having some other serious ailment, you know, that one is rushed to, the doctors take care of all the other indicators in terms of, you know, how the blood pressure is moving up, isn't it? You know, how is the breathing going? How is that going? How is that going? We need to take this serious. And that's why I'm very glad that we are having this debate in the country today, where we should be looking at each and every facet of the education sector and determine where things had gone wrong and what we can exactly do. Funding is important, definitely, isn't it? You know, there is no way in which we can do. Other countries, and interestingly, there are other countries that developed, as we said earlier, through really focusing on the basic education sector. Korea is one, a very good example. I think that has been given internationally. Yeah. And as I was saying the other time, isn't it, you know, I think it was in Dakar, a seminar where the Minister of Education of Korea was asked, please, how did you develop this your country? What did you do? What are the educational policies that you have put in place? He looked at it and said, no, we didn't do anything. And it surprised everyone. No, but you must have done something. No, we concentrated on the revival of basic education to ensure that it was functional and qualitative. And that provided the foundation that was used to build the other tiers of the system and to give the country, to give each and everyone the potential within, isn't it, you know, to ensure that, isn't it, you know, they do their best wherever they are. And we find that as a very important, isn't it, you know, thing. The second aspect is that the revival of education would have to also be predicated on the involvement of each and every stakeholder. I think that had been raised, isn't it, raised earlier. No one, federal government on its own, cannot do it, you know, because, you know, we need to understand our federal structure. We need to understand, isn't it, where some of these problems are arising. And that's the reason, isn't it, you know, one of those key issues that we have discussed with the minister that we needed to do is to go back and have the stakeholder engagement at every level within the system. at the local government level, at the state level, and then finally at the federal level, where some of these basic issues could be sorted out. Last but not the least, I think this has been raised again by the involvement of our primary stakeholders, the parents, the community leaders, and the other individuals, that have a stake in that particular system. We cannot solve the problem of out-of-school children. We talk about out-of-school children, 10.5 million. It has been stagnant at 10.5 million. The president made reference to 13.5 million the other day, isn't it? And that's the reality, but perhaps it's even higher. It's even higher, and we cannot, because we talk about quality education, about learning. But you cannot learn, isn't it, unless you are dragged, isn't it, to come, isn't it, and stay in the classrooms. Now we have a situation whereby, isn't it, about 13.5 million of our people, isn't it? And that's again where we need to be sincere to ourselves. We need to open up and understand the challenges that are facing us. It's not about any dramatic answer, it's about facing these realities and working hard to ensure that we carry everybody on board and we put the right policies that will resuscitate the system.
One final question for you, Mr. Ogundana, before we round off here is, this framework, now that it's gaining acceptability, how much of technology is being deployed to help ameliorate the situation?
One major pillar in the ministerial strategic plan is the use of information and communication technology to drive education. Because when we did a situation analysis, we realized that it's not everybody that can be in a classroom situation and learn. When you have public libraries in all the 774 local government, it's very call to learning, right? And that is why we are taking up the issue of the headquarters of National Library of Nigeria. Is very dear to the heart of the Honorable Minister, the completion of that project, because it's going to serve not only the Abuja community, it's going to serve the international community. So, building libraries is very core. ICT is very important. Then, we are now bringing into consciousness of the people that it's not certificate, it's not everybody that has to go to a university. If you really don't, you can do this technology and vocational education, and you are relevant. You see most Togolese, they are the ones that come to do POP in Nigeria now. These are things Nigerians could do those days. Go to AC and refrigeration. Our boys are running away from those things. And they will go to university, and the irony of it is that they study one in a course or the other. And they, at the end of the day, they graduate, they become Okada riders. These are some of the things to bring to the consciousness that, look, it's not a matter of university certificate that is important, but your relevance and contribution to the development of the society.
Hajjadiji, what's the role of parents at that basic level?
I think the parents have a big role to play, in the sense that the parents and the schools should be speaking the same language. Today, in the past, the child was more scared of the teacher in the school than he was of his parents. I used to remember if my mother said she was coming to the school, look, it's like hell let loose. Today, parents go to harass teachers in school because they reprimand their children.
Beat them up, more like it.
Yes. And when a parent comes to school to harass, what respect does a child have for the teacher? So if parents don't have to wait that the school and the government should take up all responsibilities. They have their own. I keep saying to some people, you say you don't have money to do this, but if there's wedding, naming ceremony and all the rest, all the monies will drop. But to pay your children's school fee or take proper care of all their needs becomes problematic. I think all parents, our children are our precious possession. They are the best things given to us, and we must give them the best. Whatever we have should be, be at their disposal. And one of the biggest things that we can leave for them that nobody can take off them is education. And so they should help the schools, the community where their children operate, and the school, the community. Everybody should team up together. Not the government. The government can't carry this load.
And it is on that note we must end this discussion and say a big thank you to all our guests. I always say this, that no one program can adequately cover all the issues. And so we will leave this here and revisit it at some other point in time. Time for us now to say our goodbyes. Let's begin from Kaduna Network Center, where we have had Professor Ibrahim Garba, Vice Chancellor Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. We thank you for being part of this discussion tonight. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Cyril. It's my pleasure.
All right. And then let's say a big thank you to Babatunde Uluwaju, an education advocate, very passionate about what we discussed tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And Hajia DJ Jibrin Bala, it's so good to see you again.
Thank you, and it's nice seeing you again.
Thank you very much. And, well, the risk of being accused of it so happens that Hajia DJ Jibrin Bala is from home. Thank you. And a big thank you also to Mr. Lawrence Ogundano, Director of Library Service, Federal Ministry of Education. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And for Dr. Hamid Boboy, Executive Secretary, UBEC, the Universal Basic Education Commission. Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And so thank you to you too for being part of this discussion. Next week we'll reach you again on Nta Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.